All right. Can you hear me okay? Because I've been having microphone issues.
It's been hilarious to watch. I listened to a little bit of you while I was on my way to the doctor's, trying to figure out your microphone issues. And I have to say, I'm glad it was you and not me.
How is your eye?
Yeah, they gave me drops for 260 fucking dollars. So I told
The
you that
price
these,
went up from the time I texted
whatever
you
it
till
was,
you
it's like
got there?
200 something bucks. And so as I told you, I hope the drops do more than just, soothe my eye.
I hope so too, dude.
I think what it was Cody might have grabbed my eyeball in the middle of the night because he likes to fuck with me at night with his paw like this. He just puts his paw in my face and in my face and in my mouth and like in my eye. And, who knows where those paws are. Anyway, Michael, do you want to talk about St. Augustine?
Not really, but I mean, that's kind of what we have to talk about.
Well, go ahead.
Well, first thing I want to tell you what happened. I just found this out. So I'm looking at my credit card statement this morning,
Hmm.
and I've got these charges from this thing called, let's see if you've ever heard of this. Let me find it here. Amazon Retta. Have you ever heard of this?
That sounds familiar.
So I look it up, and the first thing I get is Amazon Retta charges. These generally indicate standard Amazon retail purchases. If you don't recognize them, it's a strong sign of unauthorized activity.
Lovely.
Yeah.
So you might have to go into your Amazon account and change your password.
No, I'm going to go sick right now, is what's going to happen.
Don't go sick right now.
What the, what,
Speaking,
who, what the, whatever. Okay. What you want to talk about Amazon? You, you want to,
you
what do
wanted
you
to
got
talk.
to say about this, Augustine? We got new
Look,
people in the gallery. I see. I'm
great to
happy
see
to.
everybody. Great to see everybody here. I think Jim would be great to have on the show here because I know he, wrote a book about Christianity and probably knows a great deal about Augustine. Probably read The City of God and Confessions, which I haven't read. I just read about Augustine. And I don't like to read about philosophers. I like to actually read the philosophers themselves, draw my own conclusions about it. But I'm assuming maybe you know much more about this than I. So I
Wait a
would prefer.
second here. Wait. Okay. So I read the Confessions some 25 years ago. I've read a bunch about this guy, and I've read a bunch this morning. Um, so I don't know. You want to talk about
So
something else? Go ahead.
no, no, you go ahead. You go ahead. You talk about it because I
Whatever.
think I think there I think there's some relevance here, but
All
um,
right. So let me find. See, this is the problem here. All right. So according to the AI reading. So just so everyone knows how I did this, I have an AI reading from Augustine. I had an article specifically on Augustine's the psychology, and then a longer thing from Stanford on the entire philosophy. So what they're talking about is that they say he influenced psychology through his deep introspection and confessions, exploring memory, will, unconscious desires, and inner conflict, prefiguring modern concepts like psychodynamic theory, the structure of the mind, and mental time travel. Viewing psychological healing is rooted in reordering love towards God, thus laying foundations for Christian psychology and cognitive science. So the first thing that I found is he has sort of a, I guess, sort of a cogito. The Rene Descartes alleged proof that he exists because he could deny everything but that he existed. So, and when Augustine's talking about introspecting, he's talking about just viewing your mental contents. He was looking for something certain, and you can't gather certainty from about external objects, but you can about stuff that's internal. Um,
uh, go ahead.
no, don't do that. Okay,
It's
this is
just that
what's going
Jim
to
said
happen.
something, man. I'm sorry. Jim said something.
You're not sorry.
You're right. I'm not sorry, but Jim said he's happy to assist because he knows way too much about this brilliant.
Yeah, he already hinted at that this morning. Don't
Now,
think I
Jim,
don't know what he was
Jim,
getting at.
is it true that St. Augustine used to drink like dirty dishwater and stuff like that? and flagellate himself.
What?
Okay, so he was about introspection. So this is good. So he's sort of an original psychologist in the sense that he knew that the
Look,
mind existed and he thought that you could get to what?
okay, I just sent Jim the link. So if Jim wants to join us, he can. But anyways, but the whole problem with his idea of introspecting without relation to the outside world is if you're not taking into consideration of things from the outside world, there's nothing with which to introspect. There's nothing to look at. There's nothing to assess because everything that's in the mind was had to come from the
Sure.
senses. When we're introspecting about, how I feel about this, what do I think about that, how do I act? It's always in relation to the outside world. You
Yes.
cannot have, when it comes to human beings, one without the other. If there's no mind, there's no knowledge of the outside world, and if there's no outside world, then there's nothing that we can have about which we can have knowledge.
Right.
Did
So
you
its
read the stuff?
existence. I did. So it's about its existence is primary over and consciousness. So it's not I think therefore I am. It's I am therefore I think. Are you processing that? Are you on a download? Are you on
No,
analog?
I know the slogan you just handed out to me.
I'm,
But did you?
I'm
I want to talk about the stuff that we actually read.
I was just commenting on what you
You
said.
gave me a sentence.
Right. It's called an economy of concepts, my friend. Economy of concepts. Less is
All right. Are
more.
you familiar with the economy of an hour and a half show that we have to fill with analysis and discussion?
I am, but I think the more economical the concepts, the better. I'm not going to say something
All right.
unnecessary.
So Mark has summed up the whole thing. It's I am, therefore I think, and that's all you really need to know. I will
Thank
bow
you, ladies
out.
and gentlemen. Yes, we don't agree with, but I think okay. I think it's important to talk about, like, say, the differences between that his point of view and which you were alluding to, and
Yeah. See,
objectivism, and why I think one is healthier, the healthier perspective than, say, the Augustinian perspective, the
well,
rational.
usually what you do is you start off and you go through the stuff we've read, and then you ask me my thoughts
We're
on
doing
it.
it different. We're mixing it up today.
Yeah, but okay. So then what do I need you around for? Just because you're the pretty one?
Um, maybe.
And where's Valiant? He said he'd be happy to help out. I sent him a link. He's still not here.
If we want true beauty, we need Valiant here. So let's talk about why objectivism is a healthier perspective. Why the
No, we're gonna
primacy of
talk. We're gonna
existence.
do Augustine.
We are doing Augustine, but we're doing it by way of talking about objectivism, which is primacy of existence over primacy of consciousness. Why is our way of looking at the world, I think, a healthier way of looking at the world, psychologically speaking?
Well, okay. I'm going to tell you the
Sorry,
fundamental
Katie.
problem with Augustine. Of course, there's epistemological problems, there's metaphysical problems, there's ethical problems, there's all of that sort of thing. But the main problem is he has to orient everything to God, whether it be knowledge, love, happiness, everything always goes back to God, including his view of consciousness. His view of
Right.
consciousness is that our consciousness is what is in the image of God. Jim says, send the link again. Just throw him on there, Lou. Can you do that?
He's in.
All right.
Well, let me admit him. Now, what's this problem you have with God?
Oh, fuck him. Oh, excuse my language. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
Lord have mercy. I mean, look, I know if you ever watch Supernatural, which you never do, you would probably be closer to the truth, right? Because God is not a nice guy at all. But um,
Did you admit Jim?
yeah, I did.
Well, where is he?
I don't know. He disappeared into the ether.
Oh my God.
But why is it bad to say relating knowledge to God or knowledge of
All right.
therefore?
Finally, we have Jim. Okay, so the problem is here is that this guy starts off. He was what's known as a Manichaeist, and look at and we have Mr.
Manichaean.
Magoo has now joined.
Many say, will you pronounce it right, please, James?
Manichaean, please.
Okay, that's
He was a
Jim's
Manichaean.
opinion.
He was a Neoplatonist. He was a bunch of, and he was
Yeah,
a wild child too. He had a, as he describes it, a kind of wild youth.
He
But
was
it's
a
Wait,
Jim
but
Valliant.
James, can you explain what Manichaeism is,
Can
and
I
can you
can
explain
I
what
finish?
Neoplatonism is too?
finish, Michael.
Manichaeism is basically a dualist philosophy that where you have good and evil are operating at all times, and you have to kind of, I guess, choose one if it chooses the appropriate word. But later on, the mature Augustine got rid of that, and he came to see, the basically the impotence of evil. That evil isn't substantiated. What evil ultimately is the absence of good, much in the way that you might describe darkness as the absence of light.
Light is the key here. Light versus darkness here. Good and bad are not functions of biology. They're not functions of human consciousness. They are metaphysical. The universe, like Plato, the universe is the battle between light and darkness, good and evil. That is the key. We will see here, though, connected to last week, though, this is really important. Inherent in the earliest Christian literature are all kinds of Neoplatonic and Stoic influence.
Mm,
And what
mm,
Augustine did was flesh that out in Confessions and City of God. He really systematized Christianity along Neoplatonic lines, deeply influenced by Stoicism, though. And so, what gives Augustine value is precisely that. Everything we said that was good about Stoicism, and that's partial, it sort of feeds into what he's saying, which gives him psychological sophistication in a way earlier Christian literature did not have it. You asked if he drank the laundry water. That was a little later, but he was big into self-flagellation and self-punishment. He punished himself.
mortifying the flesh, I guess.
Radio. He's famous
Well,
for
who
the.
hasn't done that? I mean,
Well,
Fucking
except
felons.
not willingly. Let me put it that way. He did it on purpose.
so let's address some of the sort of psychological concepts. He thought that that human consciousness is uh, that's what's in the image of God, not our physical sort of bodies, but our consciousness is in the
A
image
body
of
is the
God.
enemy. See, it's
Now he
it's
also
it's the
taught,
traces of darkness.
yeah, he also taught that the purpose of ethics, he while he agreed that the purpose is ultimately happiness, that happiness is not to be found here. That happiness is to be found in the afterworld. Now, that type of view, guys, seems to me like if you think that this world is not about happiness, that happiness is reserved for another life, there's deep psychological implications to that.
True
What do
happiness
you
is
guys
union with
think?
God. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. To have disdain for this world in a way, to think that it's impossible that your virtue will not lead you to happiness, to me would make me feel psychologically, physically impotent in the world. And I would think that even if I gained something in the world, it wasn't a win. It separates winning from value acquisition, and I could never ever find happiness with that orientation. The only way I think I can be happy is to not separate value from my acquisition of it. To say that me pursuing life and the values of life in a virtuous way is actually what makes me happy. And the evidence of that happiness is the state of eudaimonia, that contentment that I feel, that sense of harmony with myself and with the universe, that efficacy, that pride, that sense of pride that in my character and in my capacity to live in the world. What do you think about that, Jim?
Augustine believes that real happiness is union with God, and that can't come in this life. But we can start approximating it in this life, insofar as we imitate Christ and come to know, as far as we can know God in this world, because God's pretty much unknowable. We can't wrap our heads around it until we shuffle off this mortal coil and actually see God face to face, which is the ultimate union. We can at least start moving in that direction and approximate an understanding of God and imitation of Christ. And that's the closest thing we can do here on earth. Make sense?
Yes, but that sounds it doesn't sound dismal when I think of the biblical Christ that I've read, but interpretations, Paul's version of things.
No, no, no. Jesus Christ was the nightmare that Augustine is defending here across the board. Most of Augustine's really perniciously bad ideas have two sources: the Gospels and Plato.
Paul, and Paul primarily, right?
Well, the quotations of Jesus are probably not attributable to the historical Jesus, but Paul's Jesus's obiter dicta was influenced by Pauline theology. The Gospels turned Jesus into a Pauline, and
Yes.
Paul, this Neoplatonist. So Jesus says, "Hate yourself, destroy yourself, love your enemy, submit to the evildoer, turn the other cheek, don't pursue money. Sex is not a good thing." So the body is the enemy for all Neoplaton, ultimately all mystics. Once you posit a supernatural realm, you see you've driven a wedge between life and value, between the real and the ideal, the moral, the practical. And this is why all mystics, say Indian yogis or monks in Christian Europe, are eventually at war with their own bodies. Augustine
Hmm.
felt himself, the body is the battleground and the body part is the enemy. We have to overcome it. But that's expressing a whole tradition of philosophy that had reached his point. Does that make sense? The development of
Hmm.
mystic dualism. So body bad, battling back your lusts, your appetites, your needs, good. But that generally was accepted by late classical philosophy. Neoplatonism. So he went through phases where he was influenced by Plotinus in particular. You'll notice a huge influence of the second century Neoplatonic philosopher Plotinus on Augustine.
So that's that. What was I going to say? I'll remember it in a bit. I was going to say something, but I got distracted by a comment. So keep going. Sorry,
All
I
right.
don't want
So
to.
Jim, let me see if I can't. Okay.
Oh, that's what I was going to say. Virtue. That's where I think objectivism is super healthy, as opposed to religion, because religion looks at virtue as you have to impede your life, you have to stop your action, you have to, because your life is actually going after things in your life is actually contrary to your ultimate happiness and to your salvation. Whereas objectivists view virtue as a good thing. It's pursuing life is a good. And so virtue leads to happiness, not by negating the value of life, but by embracing the value of life and going after life. So it's a very active oriented philosophy. It doesn't deny introspection, but it doesn't hold introspection as the only way in which you find truth, and it doesn't
No,
keep you from living it. It compels you to live in a way. Go ahead.
Aristotle says successful living here on earth. Know thyself, and happiness is the end, but happiness is possible right here on earth if you do know yourself. See, Plato is like the great escape is to connect with this abstract world of forms, which is the real deal. And that led to this whole tragic chain of events that leads to St. Augustine of Hippo, who was sort of the last word in Western philosophy for the next 500 years.
Wow.
Now,
Yeah. Go ahead.
his concept of good and evil, right? He says, and I think rightly so. There's a few things that I really like, and then he kind of ruins them. One is that the entire idea of virtue is predicated on will. That it's not, for instance, the emotions that we happen to have that are good or evil, but what we do in response to them. But then
Stoicism.
he goes and screws this up
Mm.
by saying that the will is fundamentally tilted toward evil because, again, he brings in the religion, the fall of Adam. So while he does allow for freedom of the will, contra Pelagian or Pelagian, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, he doesn't believe that the freedom of the will is untilted. It's tilted toward evil.
Mm.
Pelagius was a Christian philosopher who believed in free will, and Augustine would have none of that in the true sense. Your will is really your a simple choice to orient your soul towards God or not, but that's already determined. God's already worked that out. long ago, my friends.
Hmm.
So whether you're one of the elect or one of the non-elect, see, he's laying the foundations for later Protestantism. The
Mm.
Protestant Reformation of the 16th century was really a back to basics Augustinian movement. So it's very connected
Wow.
to predestination, the elect, Calvinism, for anyone familiar with Christianity. But you'll note the good thing, I got to give Augustine credit. He's pulling together. The ancient Greeks had a variety of concepts of consciousness, like memory, the active intellect, which they called nous, various other elements, the passions, psyche, the soul, which was a part of it. What Augustine did is bring it all together and give us the first integrated concept of consciousness in Western philosophy. That is
Mm.
one great achievement. He was also an early Christian who opposed slavery, so let's give him some credit where credit is due. Um, not for the right reasons, because ultimately he thinks, like Christ argued, we should all really be slaves. Slavery, if objectivism holds the trader as the model for human relations, both Jesus and Augustine, who's filling this out, believe slavery in effect. So either you're a slave to your passions and your body, Mark, or you're a slave to the will of Christ and this ultimate union with God, which is the final good.
I was a Christian at one time, James, and it wasn't the Bible that moved me to Christianity so much as some of the Christian thinkers that I read. One of the most interesting books to me that drew me to Christianity was Bulgakov's book. Uh, I'm just now forgetting the Master and the Margarita. Sorry, Master and the Margarita. And there was a scene and there's a whole scene in there between Jesus and Pilate. It goes on for several chapters, and that's actually what converted me to Christianity. And I remember doing Lost, and I was doing a scene with the young Kate, and the director says, "That's it, Jesus the carpenter." Now that's the Jesus that I had a relationship with. I didn't have the relationship with the one that said turn the other cheek and the one that mortify the flesh. I felt that now this could be me projecting, but I thought that was a development later on. It was Jesus the carpenter, the man who looked inside your soul, knew who you were, and loved you for who you were, that attracted
Oh,
me to Christianity at the time.
well, he
Um,
loves you because you're a sinner and understands you must be a sinner. Christianity, fortunately, has changed in the last 3 centuries. The Enlightenment utterly changed Christianity. It became something unrecognizable would be unrecognizable to the medievals or someone like Augustine or someone even before that. So, when you go to an American church, you'll get a far more earthly view of
mm.
Jesus. But Jesus thought, suffering good. Pick up
But
your own
still, yeah,
cross and
but still
follow
the
me.
emulation of suffering, still the dislike of the material world, still the feeling that virtues are things that hold you back, they don't animate you to live.
Don't
I
worry
think
about
that,
what you eat, what you wear. Don't worry about things of this earth. You can't serve two masters. Don't try and get rich. It's as difficult for a rich man to get into heaven.
mm,
You can hear
mm.
all this anti-worldly Platonism. And Ayn Rand, in contrast, really, before she called her philosophy objectivism, she simply called it a philosophy for living on earth.
Mm.
And so that really contrasts traditional Christian thought and, in fact, all Platonic and Neoplatonic thought from Ayn Rand.
Now,
I mean,
something that he talked about that I find very intriguing, because when I was struggling with the idea of freedom of will, this helped me immensely. The philosopher Harry Frankfurter talks about second order and first order volitions. And the first order volitions are what we actually act on, but the second order volitions are what we want to have be our volitions. The way that Augustine puts it is that we have an array kind of actions that we would like to take, but free will lies in the ability to choose amongst them. And I thought that there's good in there, but again, it's all kind of hampered by his idea that we're all swayed to do bad, to do evil, that it's in our spiritual makeup, so to say. By the
Yeah.
way, that was my dog Haley that came over because somebody said they thought I'd have a bigger dog. I have five.
Haley's adorable.
Come here, Haley.
What do you think of that, James?
Yeah, I think there's something to that because there are elements of Greek philosophy that are in him. In fact, better than some earlier Christians. A couple centuries before Augustine, there was a Christian writer named Origen of Alexandria, and the legend goes that he, took Jesus. Jesus said, "You should become a eunuch for the kingdom of heaven's sake." And people have tried to figure out what that means. Is that merely a recommendation for celibacy? Well, Origen took it seriously, and the legend goes that in front of the class, he cut off his own junk,
Oh
literally.
God. Oh God.
Okay, that's what we're
Who
talking about.
hasn't?
Who has it? Well, just to prove the point that he was taking Jesus literally and seriously, he, in front of the class
I
that he was
think I
teaching
heard that
Christianity
story.
to, he cut away all that stuff that was leading him to sin, you
Ah,
see. And your body
Ah,
is the enemy. To conquer the body, just as the Stoics said, sort of to conquer your emotions and control them. Well, Augustine took that to Christians in general, as you can see, took that to a ridiculous extent. Well, if my body is the enemy, then first thing that's got to go.
wow. Well, what do you think about that concept of conquering your emotions?
That's the wrong way to look at it. I'm not
Yeah.
constantly battling my natural desires in my body. I'm attempting to live in harmony with my body. I'm attempting to get my emotions in line with my intellectual values, my mind in harmony with my body. That's the success. That's the gauge of contentment, in fact. For Augustine, the closest thing we can come to contentment is vanquishing desire, vanquishing the body's needs and limits.
Yeah. So I mean, there's probably a lot of people out there who recognize themselves in some of the stuff that Augustine talks about when he talks about that dualism, that war between the body and the spiritual self. I think people feel that a lot. If we were to put that in objectivist terms, I mean, it just seems to me that people aren't understanding the values, that they're not clarifying values for themselves, or they have values that are in conflict with their lives, and they're not sure how to resolve that conflict. I mean, what advice would you give to people who think that someone like Augustine is actually representing a psychological phenomenon that exists really in them?
Well, you can see the conflict. You can see why people would say that. I mean, for a lot of young men, and I have to say, I include myself when I was in my 20s, um, my lower parts were doing a lot of the thinking for me. And if that makes sense. And so,
your feet?
because of that,
I'm
what?
an actor. I'm an actor, so I recognize that.
No,
No, no, no.
your
So
feet were doing this?
no,
Lower.
no, no,
Your
no.
lower parts?
Somewhere in the middle there. No, my dick. Okay, I was led by my dick too often, and that
Yes.
can be, if we allow ourselves to act on our emotions, we can easily come to the conclusion that okay, the body is the problem. The problem here is that I have a dick. So instead of saying, well, maybe I should think this through and have principles as to the use of my dick, well, because it really does give me enormous pleasure, and how it enhances my romantic relationship with my wife is incredible, both spiritually and physically. So I don't see it as my enemy anymore. Don't come to see your body as the enemy. Come to see your body as part of an inherent part of you. Augustine would say, well, you see, in Christians in general at that time, the early Roman period Christians in particular, would emphasize to you that no, 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 no. It's conquest of the body. It's conquest of every desire. Even science. He was so unworldly. I mean, this is a famous objectivist critique of Augustine. He was so anti-science. He called it the lust of the eyes. And if you try to prove with logic, he was a very logical
Really?
guy. But if you try to prove anything with logic, you see, you're already look. You can't figure stuff out. So don't even try to figure. So he's at war, really, ultimately, too, with the mind. So reason is that intermediary that helps one channel the wonderful thing that is your body into virtuous conduct, right? That's the way I would put it. So, virtuous conduct is not conquering your genitals. Virtuous conduct is learning how to use them to your most selfish advantage. Because in retrospect, my Augustinian wild youth, I look back on, that was self-defeating. That wasn't going to get me happiness in the romantic department. Okay. Have all the sex you want, Jim, sleep away with whoever, Jim, but that's not the key to happiness. The key, when I really understood what love was, the role of sex in my life, how to get the most out of both sex and this spiritual romance, is to have them integrated, have them pulling in the same direction, as opposed to pulling in opposite directions, which is exactly what Augustine is advising, if you ask me.
No, did you come to those conclusions after reading Rand? Is
Oh,
that
yeah.
what helped you to integrate that stuff?
In fact, starting to read Rand did not, it took me years to grasp what I'd read. So
Yeah.
even after I'd read Rand, I was not, I was still frequently thinking with that part.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
with the two of you, I can't win.
well, you want to win?
No,
When?
I'm just thinking about it because what I was thinking initially was the two of us hanging out with Jim, having an intellectual discussion is like going to the bar with your good looking friends and they get all the chicks and you get nothing. And that's what he does. But then I thought about what it would be like just going to the bar with you and then you'd get all the chicks and I get nothing. So either way, I'm screwed.
I am a legendary wingman, Michael. You really ought. So yeah,
Okay.
it's not a
I was accused.
counterproductive thing. It's a
Somebody told me I
positive.
talk too much frivole, which I found out means frivolous stuff.
Frivole,
But
frivole. You do. Hey,
okay,
I had the best wingman on the planet. He passed away. Frankie was the best wingman.
Yeah.
Actually, one of my
No competition.
castmates, damn, what was the show that
oh my
what was the
God,
show I
senior
did in
moment.
Pittsburgh? Was it Rust, American Rust? Yeah, he came. He was like, we all lived in the same building, and I walked outside with Frankie and Johnny, and it's like immediately, five girls come up to me and they start talking to me about the dog, and he's like, "Wow, this really is a thing." There's this. He
Yeah,
called it a
they
chick
use the
magnet. This is
dog as the
The stick
excuse,
magnet.
Mark.
I. This is really a quote unquote chick magnet. I
Oh my
guess. Yeah,
God.
yeah. So he was going to get a dog because the dog seems like a great windman. I think it was because I projected, that I'm married and unavailable, and so that somehow made me more interesting. I don't know.
When we were in DC, Rozzy points out to me because we keep trying to talk to Mark, and all the chicks are coming around, and we're getting pulling him away. And Rozzy says this happens every time I'm trying to talk to Mark. And I said, Rozzy, don't worry, they like us just as much. They're just playing hard to get. That's all that happened. But anyway,
It's a comforting thought, at least.
And James, I had an argument with an actor friend of mine who was like, "Sex is an animal thing. It's just an animal thing," and he made that distinction, and it made him really immoral in his
he's a dum
sexual.
dum.
Dum dum.
He's sort of a savage and a Cro-Magnon man. Anyway, he's sort of a brutish guy. Aspects of the dude I really love, but he would say that, and I'd sit there with him and say, "That's not the case. This is not the case. Sex isn't just an animal thing for us, for humans. It's a higher thing." And it was always Rand's concept that promiscuity isn't bad because your body is bad. It's bad because sex is too good to give away like that. And I would try to get him to understand the value, the intersection between sex and value and what it really means. But I could never get him to do it. But I was starting to, and the only reason I was probably talking to him about it is because I was trying to establish that interconnection myself. Talking, you talk out loud the things you're trying to learn and trying to establish in your own life. So it's not about repressing. It's not about repressing. It's about understanding. It's about understanding love and value and the relationship between sex and love and value.
Exactly. Sex is too good and too important, Ayn Rand said. That's why we should treat our sexual relationships seriously instead of trying to gain self-esteem through sexual conquest, which a lot of dudes do try to do. We should understand that it's an expression of our self-esteem. And the only kind of compliment I can give someone is that I'm going to have sex with you because I think you're really unattractive, or I'm just going to simply be a friend of yours because I think you're so stupid and boring and you're not fun to hang out with. No. The greatest gift you can give anyone is your selfishness. Augustine, there's nothing resembling that idea in Augustine. No, no, the point isn't to enjoy your life. The point isn't to have a healthy sexual relationship. The point is to try and conquer sex as much as possible. The point isn't to have, a friend that, understands you and you can have fun with. No, no, no. What are you talking about? If you really understood yourself, he would say, I'm saying, know thyself and know that your body is dragging you in all kinds of bad directions inherently. The body is the enemy for him. Instead of seeing that your sexual attraction is actually telling you who it is that you're attracted to, and not just physically, but psychologically who you're attracted to, is telling you something about yourself. Boy, when you get self-understanding at that level, then you go for the most selfish value you can find. And then my expression to my wife, you are the most selfish being in this world for me to be with. That is the highest compliment I can give her and the greatest visibility I can get back from her.
Yeah, one of the most interesting and politically incorrect things I think Rand suggested was that a woman would love to be the sex object of her husband.
Right.
And I think about that. That's so politically incorrect to say today, but I don't think I know a woman who would not want to be desired in that way by her husband.
Well, my wife has the funny story. She loved living in New York City. She'd walk back or across the construction site, and the guys would yell, ogle, whistle. And, she said, please never come to the day where they don't ogle and whistle, right?
Yeah.
But more than that, she understands that when someone comes to know her and her insides, not just the way she presents, the same thing works. And unless, someone really understands, this is the other part. Unless she really is understood, then really a relationship. It's nice to get whistled at, but if you want to have a relationship with someone, they should appreciate your mind just as much as they appreciate your body, and the two should be an interactive, you're it kind of experience.
So Augustine, his conception of love was, it seems a little, not a little, like he thought that basically all love is erotic, but you have to not express it erotically. What's that all about?
The Greeks had a much more sophisticated vocabulary when it came to love than English does. We have this sloppy word love that covers everything. I love a pretty painting and her sunset. I love, there's a mother loves her child. And then, of course, I have romantic love for my wife that definitely has a sexual component. So eros, agape, philein, are distinct concepts for them. It's positive, deeply important positive regard, but directed at different objects, because what a mother feels for her child, or what you feel for a work of art, or what you feel for your sexual partner are really at least three different kinds of love, if that makes sense.
Sure.
Now, they say that Augustine had the influence of Plato. They talked a little bit about Cicero, and also the Neo-Platonists. They said he died with Plotinus on his lips. So, what can you tell us about these Neo-Platonists, fellas?
Well,
or women. I mean, if they're involved too, I just don't think they had them at this point.
Well, it's interesting because women were involved in early Christianity and were a big influence. Early Christian women would refuse to have sex with their husbands and stuff like that, and because they thought celibacy. St. Paul recommends celibacy. It's better to get get and can at least contain sex to marriage for the purpose of reproduction, principally. But you can do it if you have the self-discipline to do it. Follow my example, be a celibate. But it is better.
He was ugly. He was an ugly guy, though, wasn't
he? We don't know what Paul looks like.
I thought he was a notoriously ugly guy, and so that would seem like, yeah, I think an ugly guy would go for that. You know what
Paul?
I mean? Yeah.
You think he was a micro penis guy?
I don't know about
micro penis energy. But, I can tell you that.
Well, I mean, the guy was a Pharisee, and he was going around murdering Christians, so he had issues, big time.
He had issues, but alas, we have no description of his self-description of his looks. He does beat up himself like all good Platonists must. You see, Plato was comparatively an egoist to these later cats. He did think that happiness was, a good thing and that you could achieve it on earth if you knew your role in society, so forth. He compared society to a body, right? And, if you're the little finger, just be contented in being the little finger and you'll be happy. But happiness was possible. And there's a sort of implicit egoism with Plato. The whole point is to be happy. As the Neoplatonic philosophers developed this, it became he was not strictly speaking a monotheist. He believed that these forms in the world of forms had greater reality and that there was a hierarchical relationship with them. But the form of the good was the ultimate reality. The sun, whose light gives existence to everything else, if we could see it that way, as we escaped the cave and so forth. Plotinus in the 2nd century, he got it. The form of the good is the one, is the ruling consciousness. And boy, you can see that that's the intermediary step between Plato and Christian philosophy. Does that make sense? And so Plotinus worked out this full-on dualistic system, which we call Neoplatonism. Most scholars today, and of Christian scholars, take Professor Robin Faith Walsh, understands Paul and the New Testament as being a perfect Middle Platonist just before the development of Neoplatonism. And so Augustine had a little, remodeling to do on Christianity, and he fashioned it in the form of, that's why it's the last word on his lips, you see. Plotinus really helped him complete Christianity as a systematic philosophy.
Jim, I don't like when you come around and start pronouncing things correctly. I said Plotinus. I think we should just roll with Plotinus and not switch it up to Plotinus, right? So
I
Jim,
loved it because he said
know,
he said Plotinus's name earlier, and I thought you were going to pick up on that.
No, that's what he said. Anyway, so
Right.
At the end of Opar, the Objectivism, the Philosophy of Ayn Rand, Leonard Peikoff talks in terms of the ancient duel between Plato and Aristotle. When I'm thinking of Augustine, the one that I compare him to is Aquinas. And I think of Augustine and Aquinas as kind of the Christian version of Plato versus Aristotle. Is that okay? So it is the right way to look at it. All right. I'm leaving. I'm not going out on a high note. Anyway, explain that a little bit, Jim.
Well, we can start with epistemology. Augustine said, before, if you want to believe in God, you just got to do it. The proof will come. You'll see it's true once you believe, but belief comes first. And so for him, and that is the ultimate knowledge from which any true knowledge will later be derived. But to know, you just start out believing. Aquinas said something else altogether. He said, you don't even get the field of theology until you can prove the existence of God using Aristotelian logic, observation plus logic. And Aquinas developed these famous 5 proofs for the existence of God, which were based on his own deeply Aristotelian epistemology. To know, we got to look, and then we got to logically process what we're looking at. And so, no. You don't start by believing. You start by looking at the evidence. And if the evidence and logic leads you to God, then and only then are you even warranted in starting your theology. Because you need God to get theology off the ground. And to get God, you have to use Aristotelian reasoning. So they are the opposite. And so Aquinas was constantly making Christianity more livable, more worldly. So, for example, Jesus says, turn the other cheek to aggression. Someone punches you in the face. You can't hit back, obviously. You can't even block the punch. You can't even run away. You've got to sit there and say, okay, hit me over here. And Augustine took that dead seriously, and he said, killing in self-defense, even if it's reasonable self-defense, someone's shooting at you with a gun, it is still a sin to shoot back. He took him seriously. Augustine said, look at animals, look at other societies, again, using observation and logic. And he said, self-defense is actually not a bad thing. And so Christian laity, ordinary Christians, you can act in reasonable self-defense. So long as you're not acting out of a motive for revenge, you can act in reasonable self-defense. Clergymen who take these vows, no, they've devoted themselves to Christ, and so they have to suck it up. if attacked, they have to obey Jesus. This was really a commandment to the apostles, you see, and by inference to priests and monks, not so much advice to all of us ordinary Christians. That was and that was just one example of how Augustine softened and made worldly the horrible antibody, anti-life ideas. And so
You mean Aquinas?
Aquinas, thank you. You know, there's the famous Raphael fresco, the School of Athens,
Mm.
all these philosophers. And Plato has got his finger pointed to the heavens. Aristotle has his hand pointed to the earth. And that
Mhm.
tells you everything you need to know about those two philosophers. So the whole of Western philosophy, as Leonard describes it at the end of the book, is a battle between the fundamental orientation of Plato versus the fundamental orientation of Aristotle. Aquinas reintroduced in a systematic way Aristotle into Christian thought and brought about the Renaissance, the Enlightenment, and all the wonders of the modern world.
And
We owe
ultimately
so
us
much
three,
to
right?
Aquinas. Yes. What? Did I catch
Us
that right?
three.
Oh, us
The
three, of
Enlightenment.
course.
When you said Enlightenment, I thought of the three of us right away.
Well,
That's the
yes, we
first
are
thing.
the Platonic form of the Enlightenment.
Um, you know, I first learned an idea from my rabbi in prison, Jim. He told me of, Jesus is saying, "Do unto others as you would have do unto yourself," and my rabbi said, "Well, that actually there's an older version in Judaism from Hillel that says, 'Don't do unto others that which you yourself find offensive.'" And I didn't really get the difference, but he explained to me the difference is that "do unto others" is a call for action. And he explained to me that that is used to justify a
Mm.
whole lot. Because
Sure.
if I think your soul's in danger, for instance, by not being a Christian, if I think, well, if I wasn't a Christian and my soul was in danger, I'd want somebody to force me to, go to the right way. And then they, in turn, use that as the excuse. And what I learned today was that, what's his face here? Augustine was actually one of the originators, if not the originator, of that idea that you could actually engage in sort of religious compulsion. And there's another philosopher, George Santayana, who said, "Don't do unto others as you would have them do unto you. They might not share your tastes."
So, George Santayana, the Harvard philosopher, really sometimes was very insightful. And here again, Santayana puts his finger on something really important. The golden rule, whether in its negative or positive formulations, is basically empty. I mean, even whichever, I'm a masochist. So you say,
Yes.
don't do to someone what you wouldn't have them do to you? Well, wait a minute. Okay, so if I'm a masochist, I would like you to beat me up and cause me to suffer. And so I better be a sadist in return. The best thing I can do for others if I'm a masochist is be a sadist.
Yeah.
And so, really, the golden rule in either Hillel of the first century BC, Christianity just lifts from him and puts it in positive formulation. But it's a pretty I mean, I can see it as the starting point of some guidance, but it's pretty empty in its content. Augustine, yes. Well, see, Augustine's writing about 100 years after Christianity has become the official religion of the Roman Empire. Now we have to have one single doctrine of Christianity and all these heretics. And this is how they justify it. You put your finger on another important thing. Christians, how could they torture people and burn them at the stake? Well, out of Christian love. The best thing look, if we've got all of your eternity yawning before you, and the choice is a lake of unquenchable fire versus union with God, obviously the best thing I can do for you, Michael, if you're, an atheist, is to torture you into submission, burn your body so if your body gets resurrected, it won't be a source of punishment for the rest of your life. So the kindest thing you can do, they burnt at the stake and tortured heretics out of Christian love.
Yeah. I just got to say, if we decide, if anybody wants to make an out of context for this, we have two quotes from Jim that are out of the park. One is, "The biggest problem is I have a dick." And then the other one, "I'm a masochist." Like, so if we could just get those out there into the world, that would be great.
I am not a masochist. I'm squeamish about pain. If anything, I'm a sissy about pain. But yeah, out of context.
Yeah.
Persephone,
So,
I hope you're
Jim,
taking notes.
you and I right now are doing a series on using this uh, for self help. Do you think there's anything in Augustine that can be used in that endeavor?
I would say no. because the insights that he had that were positive, that I started with, trying to give the devil his due, if I can put it that way, with St. Augustine, were better developed by later philosophers, and themselves were the product of the influence of better philosophers. So, Mark's admiration, say, for Stoics and how they were helpful to him, I wouldn't guide you to Augustine for Stoic type insights, even though there are Stoic type insights there. Does that make sense?
Right. I'm sorry, I'm laughing because of something that Persephone posted. We have a new shirt. I love this. I love this shirt idea. Your dick is not the enemy. Your dick is not the enemy
I love
shirt.
it. I love it. I love it. That's great.
Yeah, Stoicism was now I've recommended Stoicism to some folks as a sort of a triage, like an emotional triage. This is when I was, first becoming an objectivist. Now I just recommend objectivism, but I remember a friend of mine who tried to drink himself to death. He was an atheist, and I said, "You got to get into a program, man. You just got to get into a program." He's like, "I'm an atheist, man. I can't stand that God stuff." I'm like, "Well, God ain't, it's like atheism isn't working for you right now." I knew he needed a coherent way of looking at the world. He needed an approach that forced him to act in the world. And as repulsive as the program can be as a sort of religious recruitment thing, it also gives somebody a way of looking at the world. And he needed that to guide him a little bit. And I was hoping it would be a stepping stone in a way that Christianity was for me a stepping stone. I was searching for a philosophy. I was searching for a way of looking at the world. And I don't know that it led me to, but certainly having arguments with a friend who is an objectivist led me to objectivism, which then led me to embrace that philosophy.
Yeah.
And I know other, I know like Ben Baer and Aaron Smith I think they were Christians, and you had your Christian background, and you came to objectivism somehow, right? So.
Yeah. And when I worked with drug addicts at the DA's office, I would often see total nihilists and self-destructive people who weren't conceptual at all, dramatically change for the better their life by finding religion. That was, in effect, for them, a step in the right direction. Now, my own advice, and you've got to be gentle with this, obviously, when someone's trying to cope with an addiction or some serious problem, self-improvement. The key, really, the answer here is what society pushes back altogether on: selfishness. You've got to say, hey, wait a minute. Is this really in your self-interest? When I've been able to overcome bad habits or improve myself, it's because I've focused on and every time you think of doing it, no, that's self-destructive. Why would you do that? You're hurting yourself in the long run. Stop it. Because selfishness, I think, is the best motivator of all. How do we get people to be moral? Well, to get people to get their act together and to be moral, I can think of no stronger motivation than egoism. You're hurting yourself.
Hold yourself as a value. Yeah.
Bingo. Make yourself the god of your religion, in effect, if I can put it that way.
There are people that would scare right now. I mean, especially people who are going through, turmoil, and their thinking is a little bit muddied. They hear something like that, make yourself the god of your own religion, and they're terrified by that, it seems to me. How do you help somebody?
It's one word, I.
Yeah. They've had beaten into this, I'm not worthy, who am I why should I give a crap about myself? That was the thing I really had to overcome in my own psychological improvement. I had to, because I remember as a little kid, a 9-year-old kid praying alone in his room, God, please let me not be so selfish about everything. And I just look back on that with horror, with absolute horror. What was I doing to my little soul, my little consciousness? Inspired by Paul's letters, you read Philippians, he tells you you're a piece of crap, and really what you should do is sacrifice yourself for everybody else, in effect. And so taking that stuff seriously can be very self-damaging. Talk about self-harm. And objectivism, what objectivism taught me was philosophy is where the answer here lies. Selfishness does not mean following the whims of the moment, using my dick, to think for me. Philosophy is being long run, thinking of all of your interests and all of your values in the long run. so you properly can use your eyes. It's not lust. Science is not a lust of the eyes. Properly use my genitals to my own greatest advantage.
I love that, Jim. That was great. Use my
We have
genitals to
three
my
shirts
own
going
greatest
on there.
advantage.
We have 3 shirts, Persephone. 3 shirts.
I wish I could take, I'm just putting in my own words stuff that I got from reading Ayn Rand and from talking to Leonard Peikoff. So I wish I could take the credit for all of this, but a lot of this is just my own verbalization of what great philosophers have taught me.
All right. So let's just say about Paul, fuck that guy.
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
Can we just say fuck that guy?
Yeah, we can.
All right, fuck that
He
guy
thought
and
slavery
his
was
genitals.
cool. At least Augustine was a critic of slavery. Paul said, having a harsh slave master is actually a salvation opportunity. So never try to escape even a harsh slave master, because after all, you're earning brownie points in heaven for your suffering here on earth.
I would expect nothing less of a murderous Pharisee. Nothing.
You see, that's how fucked up Christianity is, really.
All right,
It pits you at war with your own body and happiness and life.
Yes, I think we should take questions if there are any questions out there, folks. Sorry, not sorry if we offended you about Christianity, because we want you to embrace the world and this life, and we want you to embrace reason and virtues as a means of living.
What did you just do? Did you just apologize to Christianity?
No, I said sorry, not sorry.
No.
No, okay, I'm with that.
Yeah, and let me just say, because you're a Christian, it doesn't make you an evil person. However harsh my words about Christianity and Jesus, Paul, and Augustine or Origen are now, a perfectly good, honest person. It is, my parents were not bad people, but they took me to church. They didn't realize how they were screwing me up. They weren't nearly so religious as I was when I was a kid. I mean, I almost hear the voices still of my parents saying, he'll grow out of it. He'll grow out of it. Maybe he's too religious. But they took me to church because they didn't know any other way to give their kids moral instruction. And so it can be a totally benevolent motive that makes someone a Christian. And that's why religion persists in this age of science, because science hasn't developed a scientific morality.
I just hate the idea of having to always, every time you speak about religion or atheism, and you have to, well, you don't have to, but people will apologize for giving offense. But yet when Christians talk about, I'm going to burn in hell for all eternity, nobody has to apologize for that. And that seems a far worse thing to say than, well, Christianity's not true.
You put your finger on what broke Christianity for me. Really broke Christianity for me. So you're saying believe or you suffer eternity in hell. Wait a minute. Or accept Jesus Christ and you live forever. The famous John 3:16 that everyone holds up at sporting events. It says, for God so loved the world. It said basically, if you believe, you get saved. If you don't, keep reading.
So a guy like O.J. Simpson could go his whole life without repenting the murder of 2 human beings, and at the last minute before he kicks it, say, I accept Jesus Christ as my savior and go to heaven, while a scientist who saves 1 billion lives goes to hell if he's an atheist.
Right. And I thought belief should not be a matter of rewards and threats. It should be a matter of my own independent judgment. So it became the Voltaire line, God, you're going to damn me for using my own best judgment, the judgment you presumably created me with. Okay,
it's
if there is a God and I do meet him someday at the pearly gates or something, I'm going to say, God damn you, could you really put me in hell just for using my own best judgment? Well, if so, I don't want union with you like Augustine wants. Probably most of my friends are down there anyway. So
there's a great saying. I don't know if it's apocryphal or not, that somebody wrote in a concentration camp. If there's a God, when I meet him, he better ask me for forgiveness. And
bingo.
Great.
Amen.
All right, we got Anna. Anna's in the house.
Stop. I was waiting here until you stopped talking.
Oh, thank you.
Go ahead.
So, talking about Christianity and Catholics and yada yada. I'm a Catholic, but the rest of I'm Catholic. My mom's Catholic. My whole siblings are Catholic. The only one out of my family who's an atheist is my dad. There were never ever problems about it. And I was just saying, I, as a child, believed that God existed, yada yada. And now I have my doubts. And I'm not going to church so that often.
And Catholicism has been dramatically influenced by this cat Thomas Aquinas that we were talking about.
Yeah.
After Thomas Aquinas, in the next couple of centuries, there was a fierce war between the mystics, the Augustinian types, and the Aristotelian types like Thomas Aquinas. By the Renaissance, Aquinas had won. Aristotle was now becoming an official part of Catholic doctrine, and a great tradition of scholarship. I mean, some of the best universities and law schools are run by Jesuits. So there, let me just say that there's a rich tradition in Catholicism.
Yeah.
On the other hand, don't sell your soul to any authority.
I already sold my soul, but not to Christ.
Yeah. Turning your mind over to authority is inherently problematic for self-improvement.
Yeah.
I think you can see why. Our brothers here, Michael and Mark, did a wonderful thing on this article by Nathaniel Brandon, Mental Health versus Mysticism and Self-Sacrifice. The worst thing you can do is to turn your judgment over to someone else. Self-improvement really requires that we make ourselves the God of our own universe.
Yeah.
Right. You hold your judgment as being valid. You hold your judgment about the world as being valid. It's certainly okay to take under consideration an authority's perspective on something. I need people like James, Michael, Aaron Smith in my life. I get to think about the things that they say and judge for myself whether or not I think those are true. And that's what the state of being in doubt right now. Sometimes that throws people into a state of they don't feel like they're in equilibrium anymore. Their world is a little bit turned upside down. I think that's a great state for you to be in right now. Now you can seek the truth. Your mind is active because you're in the state of doubt. Go read Opar. Go read Rand. And test for yourselves their ideas. Digest Peikoff, digest Rand for yourself, and see whether or not the Catholicism measures up. It didn't for me. One of the things that was, I was baptized Catholic. I went to a Catholic school. I went to a Catholic high school.
I did too.
One of the things that, as I started to get objectivism later in life, and I would periodically go to church, I remember going to a Catholic church and looking to either side of me and seeing the Stations of the Cross, which all culminate in the dead Jesus on a cross. It was all about you're surrounded by suffering and death, and that was supposed to inculcate in you a sense of guilt. And from that guilt of vulnerability to, I think, the word that they were giving you. So I abandoned that and I went to a born-again Christianity where there's the barren cross. It emphasizes Christ is risen, he's alive and in the world. And so it wasn't emphasizing death so much as the Holy Spirit. And that was more interesting to me until I heard them singing "Bathe Me in the Blood of Jesus," and I knew they took that literally. And this was
up.
"Bathe me in the blood of Jesus." No, they say that. I mean, look, what is the miracle of the Eucharist but the transformation of bread and wine into the literal body and blood of Jesus Christ? You are eating a human being, cannibalizing a human being in the hopes that ingesting that virtue does, performs a miracle within you. And so when I heard that,
fucked up, I think.
Well, people were singing that. People were singing "Bathe Me in the Blood of Jesus" with smiles of ecstasy on their face. I literally, James, I got up and I walked out of the church, and I never went back to a church after that day.
Yeah, torture and death is the very centerpiece symbol. But we Christians will look back on very primitive religion that engages in human sacrifice or cannibalism with disdain. Obviously, that's absurd. But really, Christianity is the embodiment of that propitiation of the gods idea. Jesus took one for the team. And so,
Hate
but
that idea.
a good man suffering for the rest of us somehow gives me the credit. See, if someone does something good or bad, how does that redound to my credit? That was another thing that bothered me about Christianity. Okay, Adam sins, so we all get to go to hell, and then Jesus does this great sacrifice, and that will. So why is God judging me based on what some distant ancestor did or what some other dude did? I would rather stand or fall on my own merits, thank you very much, even if there is a God.
Find the contradictions in the religion and understand that it can't stand on contradictions and that it's wrong. But find those for yourself. Don't take our word for it. Find it for yourself. And once you become convinced, once you see, as we have seen, you really can't go back.
That's a really good question. Cosmic Wolf just put in the chat. If there was a God, why would he or she, that entity, allow all the horrible things that are going on?
Well,
Well,
there's didn't what was his name? James, is it Rabbi Kushner? Who was it that wrote Why Bad Things Happen to Good People? Do you know what I'm talking about?
well, there have believers in God have been wrestling with this problem. Epicurus was an ancient Greek philosopher who sort of posited this question. There can be no all-powerful creator who is also benevolent. Obviously, if
Mm.
you're an all-powerful creator, anything, in fact, such a thing would want me to have suffering for its own sake. Whatever purpose God could have accomplished with, say, a stub toe, he could have accomplished without that stub toe. He's omnipotent. So God must really want each and every instance of suffering, a child dying from some horrible disease, or simply my stubbing my toe on the coffee room table. He must want each of those things to happen for its own sake. It can't be the part of some greater purpose. That
Mm.
was the purpose, because God could have
Mm.
surely gotten whatever purpose he wanted in some other way. The problem of evil is what it's called. But all it says, it's not the refutation of the existence of God. All it says is that if there is an omnipotent creator God, he's a real mofo. He's a sadistic bastard.
Yeah, I like what Persephone says. If God is omnibenevolent but not omnipotent, he wants to stop evil but cannot.
Right.
If God is
But why
omnipotent
can't
but
he? That's
omnibenevolent,
the question.
he can stop evil but chooses not to. If God is both, then why does evil exist?
These are all
Very
the
good guy.
questions
Just
we
with the
all
Noah's
have,
flood
but
story, you got to wonder, why did God surely anticipated that people would screw up? So he created all mankind so that a few generations he could wipe them all out except Noah and his kids? Really?
You could say that from Genesis on. He
Yeah,
created them
over and
knowing the whole
over and
thing.
over and over again.
Superior being right there.
hello,
There's a superior
puppy.
being.
Sorry,
Look at those eyes.
I'm getting distracted by Mike's puppy.
That's okay. I'll just
Yeah.
leave you with this, Anna. Your doubt is a very healthy thing. It means you're
Yes.
active-minded. So look at objectivism, pursue it, and digest it for yourself and decide for yourself whether or not it's right or wrong. Don't take our word for it.
And one more thing before I go. I know Katrin and you talked about losing weight a few weeks ago.
Yes. Yes.
I lost 4 kilos.
Good
I'm
job.
now from 74 to 70.8 kilos.
Fantastic. So I take that as you're holding your health as a value and you are
Yes.
now pursuing a healthy life and not feeding, those insecurities with food addictions or anything else, or crushing your feelings with food or anything like that. Good. Good. Keep
Wonderful.
up the good work. I encourage you to exercise. Yeah, move around. The older you get, the more important that becomes. And the earlier you start doing that, the easier it is for you to continue it later in life. I know people who are in their 80s right now who can barely move because they stopped being active in their 40s and 50s, like so many people do today. I know people that I graduated, most of the guys, James and Michael, that I graduated high school with look a little bit like mountain gorillas now
Oh,
because they
wow.
just don't take care of themselves. There's like three of us who are right around our high school weight, our college weight, and the rest of the whole class has just let themselves go to hell. They just started drinking and eating and not moving around too much. I think they equated work with, with subsisting, and vacation with living and joy, and inactivity with, and in with happiness. And so they just let themselves go. I think you got to keep moving all the time, or you're going to rust, man. You're going to rust. Keep moving, exercising, treat your body like it matters, because you don't want to spend, especially your later years, if you can help it, in illness and as an invalid. I mean, there are things you can't help, of course. You could do the best job in the world and still be afflicted by a terrible disease. That could happen. But do everything within your power to make sure it doesn't. What's up, Mandy?
Hi. Well, actually, now we're talking about it, like I have a pretty bad disease, but I'm still doing Qigong every day because that's pretty much the only thing I can do. And it helps a lot,
Qigong is very good. I think
because
it's
you
a
keep
very,
on stretching. But I'm actually really skinny, so I don't want to lose weight. I'm always a little
yeah.
bit afraid of that because I get on a dangerous level sometimes.
Can you eat a lot of protein, or does your disease forbid that?
Well, I eat very balanced, so that's good. I just don't gain weight. And I easily lose weight. Yeah, it's the
Can you
dream
do
of a lot of people, I know.
can you do resistance work besides
Barely.
Qigong? Can you do weights at all? No.
No, not that much.
Okay.
But I
Well,
studied a lot, so I know all the exercises.
Qigong is good. I was doing that for a while when my heart was not really functioning that well, and it was really good. A unity of mind and body and breath. I felt it really did help me quite a bit, and the movements are very good and very invigorating for your body if you can't do anything quote unquote super strenuous.
I can even
It's
do
a
it sitting down for the people who cannot stand.
Yeah, so folks, for any of you who are a little bit less mobile out there, look into swimming if you can do that, and or qigong exercises like that you can do sitting down. Very important to stay moving. Anyway, did you have a question, Mandy?
No, I just wanted to add something to the discussion.
Sure.
Like, I believe that heaven and hell are just places in your mind, and a lot of people are living in their personal hell and take others with them.
What do you say about that, guys?
It works as an analogy. I like
I
the
think it works as an
analogy.
analogy as well. Yeah, I think it works as an analogy as well. Thanks, Mandy.
But you don't
Thank
need
you,
religion
Mandy.
for that.
You
Bye.
don't need you don't need what?
You don't need religion for to be a good person. And I actually
Correct.
talk about God all the time, and I'm still an atheist, so you can have both.
You can have both. Is that what you said?
Yes.
We'll disagree on that,
And
but I understand what you're talking about. If you're using it as it's a form of symbolism, it can make some sense as the analogy of heaven and hell as states in your mind, you're living in. I don't think you can have this entity that exists somewhere in a supernatural realm that's omnipresent, omnipotent, omniscient. I don't think that's a possibility. But that's where my reasoning mind has taken me. Your reasoning mind is taking you somewhere else. But I think there's an error there, but that's just me. You have to think about that on your own and come to your own conclusions.
but everyone has their own beliefs.
That's true. And some are right and some are wrong.
You're always right.
I
No,
am
but I
not.
am.
I am not. Michael is. James is even more right than Michael. Me, I'm full of error and I'm always having to adjust myself.
And
But
that's
I
really
certainly,
good.
but I certainly don't use God as my standard.
It
I
actually
use
shows a lot of intelligence that you are like, I used to believe this, and now I'm this.
Well, thank you.
Because
Yeah.
you can adapt to different situations and different way of thinking.
Yeah, yes, I was capable of change. It was painful. I mean, look, anybody out there who's a believer, you're turning your moral premises upside down. Which essentially means you're turning your character inside out. and looking at it, which is a very, very painful process. And when you abandon those moral premises at some point, it hurts. It's a death of sorts. And so it took me a long, long time to give up God. It took me a long, long time. And when it happened, I think it was because of just the percolation of these ideas dripping into my subconscious, where finally I'm like, oh yeah, that's true. I finally just embraced it in a one fell moment. It sort of happened after probably 10 years of struggling with it. But I realized that my desire for God came from a desire for something I didn't have in my early life. I didn't have a father in my life. That's why Jesus the Carpenter and Master and the Margarita appealed so much to me. I wanted to be looked at the way Jesus looked at Pilate in that book. I wanted that person in my life who knew me inside in my soul and knew that I was decent, right? Who could touch me and perform a miracle on me. I wanted that. I didn't have it. And when I understood that my search for my desire for God was really a desire for a dad, and that I now had to I could let that happen with mentors in my life, but I had to primarily perform that service for myself. I had to be my father for myself. I had to mourn the fact that, well, dad wasn't there for me. I mourned that, got that out of the way. And now it's about me being the best father I can be to myself and the best human being I could be for my own happiness, my own
But you
long-term
are the
happiness.
best father for yourself because you know exactly what you need. And you don't have to raise yourself.
Well, well, that's sort of true. Sometimes you don't know exactly what you need. Sometimes you really have to search for it because you hold values at a I don't know if this is the right language, James, but you hold it at a sort of core level. It's almost a cellular level, because I feel like you've been engaging with conclusions about reality from the time you were preconceptual, and so these things are in your body, and and so they're hard to get to. It's like when Rand talked about your sense of life, and did she say it was impossible to change your sense of life, James and Michael, or just really, really hard?
Yeah.
You can't.
I don't even
Does
know
he
if
have to raise
she
his hand to
actually
talk?
said it was difficult. Somebody said it was difficult. I'm not
Somebody.
positive it
It's
was even her.
James is raising his hand. Lou, if we could get him on here, I don't know why he can't just mute or unmute. Is Lou
Yeah,
there?
Yeah,
I
Jim, what
muted
happened?
myself because there was background noise and I needed to cough and
Oh,
so forth. And so I needed permission to get
okay.
back in. But yeah, no, Ayn Rand did not say it was impossible. She did say it can be difficult because the most fundamental principles that shape our deepest emotions usually are way back when we're kids. It takes a lot of introspection and work to alter your sense of life, because sense of life is the most fundamental emotional cast we have. So tough,
Yeah.
but not impossible.
Well, so James, an actor friend of mine who I haven't talked to in 30 or so years, reminded me that he gave me a nickname back in the day when he first met me. He called me the Dark Cloud. And I guess that's that's the way I was in my late 20s, and that's in my early 20s. And then I discovered Rand in my mid 20s. And but through a process of a lot of thinking, a lot of reading, a lot of introspection, I became something else. Now that doesn't mean that some of that darkness isn't still in me. It is,
You're still
but
into
I'm
horror
aware
movies.
I'm still into horror movies. So maybe that's part of what I get to exercise that demon in the horror movie world. I do
See,
find
but
it a
that's a
bit
healthy,
cathartic.
yeah, yeah. If it survives like
I,
that, actually, you've turned it into fun now. So, at one
so
level, right?
horror movies are sort of complicated too, because in a way it's that catharsis of those dark elements in me, but it also, I associate a lot of good things with horror movies, believe it or not. Like on Saturday nights, my mom and I would watch a horror movie together. So it was like a type of family bonding. And then when I was a teenager, I'd go out with my friends, and those were the movies that we'd see.
Yeah.
So I associate the positive social things and the bond with my mother with that kind of stuff too. So that's deep. That's all deep stuff.
I
Um,
also used to be really dark and depressed as a child and a teenager, but you can turn it around indeed. But it is very painful and very hard work. And not everyone is ready for that. Like people seriously thought that I was on drugs because I was in pain all the time. And I was like looking like this and And that was my normal look because I couldn't really get up and get to life. But luckily, I started really early, so I got out of that when I was in my mid-20s. But still,
That's
lots
good.
of people thought that I was like on drugs or anything like that. I've heard that so often, but just
Mm,
because I was in pain.
yeah. Well, I'm glad you're out of pain now. Keep up the good work and keep up the
Well, not out
qigong.
of physical pain, but we're working on that.
Yeah, that's tough. That is tough.
Hi,
What's up, Katie?
Katie.
Can you unmute? There
There
you
we
go.
go. Hello.
We got
Okay. So yeah, my questions are kind of complex. So okay, so with the whole learning about like what's right, what's wrong, generally like with me, most of my stuff was learned through the whole Christianity thing, and so it's kind of been habit. Um a lot of those morals, why would I want to change those? Because I mean, they were good morals to learn, I guess. But at the same time, how do I get out of that? Because I haven't been going to church. Like I said, a lot of that has to do with the whole pastor, what happened with the pastor and how they handled it. Um, but like, yeah, I'm trying to get away from a lot of that.
Well, I don't think you can just get away from, you can't be in a moral vacuum. I mean, you have to exchange it for something else, in my view. And I mean, we talk about objectivist ethics all the time here. And I think the best thing for you to do at this time is when you're in between, I don't know, ideas, so to speak, you're trying to figure out where you want to direct your life. I mean, you have to read Ayn Rand if you can. I would read James or Michael. What would your suggestions be for a first time read through Ayn Rand? Something really digestible.
Do you like fiction, or do you like, or do you absorb, or is it a better input to get nonfiction guidance? And is it moral guidance you're looking for, or how to apply it? I mean, those are important questions. And bear in mind, nearly every religion has what I could pull out as some decent, rules of thumb, let's put it that way, rough and ready rules of thumb, sort of out of context. You don't murder people, don't steal, try to be honest. So there's a kernel of truth to a great many aspects of religious ethics. So don't throw out the baby with the bathwater, first of all. And by coming to understand why those things really are good and important, to respect other people's rights, to be honest, um, coming to understand the real basis for that can be really enormously, I found enormously important in terms of self-improvement. So the way I look at, say, dishonesty now is, why would I effing do that to myself? I'm not doing this to
Mm.
get to heaven. I'm doing this because I want to maximize my chances of success. I want to keep my consciousness, the integrity of my consciousness. I want to stay in touch with I want reality always to be on my side, rather than having to, live to, feed someone's delusion or feed my own delusion. So again, understanding where ethics, and there, of course, um, there are good books on ethics, and I think the best of them are, Ayn Rand's Virtue of Selfishness and Leonard Peikoff's Objectivism, the Philosophy of Ayn Rand. He'll show you the whole context of where ethics comes from, the base of knowledge we need to develop it, because being secure about what our values are, and then the manifestations of that in other places, like in art and politics, and to some degree psychology, which he doesn't get into. But I could recommend The Psychology of Self-Esteem by Nathaniel Branden. That will connect the dots psychologically for you. Your emotions are the product of your value judgments. Ethics is really all about value judgments, right, wrong, good, bad. the most fundamental value judgments you make about yourself and your relationship to the universe are what shape your whole psychology. So understanding values and getting, we talked about getting control of something. It's not so much your body that's your enemy that you have to vanquish and get control of. What we have to do is come to understand what our emotions are, and then come to the correct value judgments so that your emotions are pulling in the direction of your life. Make sense?
I would suggest philosophy who needs it first. I find that to be a good explanation for why you need philosophy to begin with. There's also a great essay on ethics called Causality versus Duty. I would read that and then Virtuous Selfishness if you're looking for nonfiction.
Yeah, that's the best sales book philosophy ever had, as Dr. Peikoff says about Ayn Rand was the greatest salesman of philosophy of all time. And she has an essay. She delivered a lecture to the graduating class of West Point back in the 70s. And she explained why philosophy is so important. And in Causality versus Duty, she actually explains why are we being ethical at all? Ethics, being people always associate selfishness with sort of self-term gratification. If I want a difficult value to achieve, I've got to put in the thought and the work it takes to get that difficult value. That's not a sacrifice. That's the ultimate selfishness, thinking in principle and thinking long term, but recognizing the law of causality. You see, it's not some duty from religious ethics. It's just getting the most out of life requires the most effort and the most thought. That's just a matter of cause and effect.
Yeah, and that includes, Katie, acquiring objectivism. You can't drift into it. You don't drift into objectivism like you can drift into religion or just find yourself there because it's what your parents did. No, this you have to grapple with, and you're going to have to put in the hard work. So philosophy, who needs it? That's a great start, I think. So give that a shot and start putting in the work, and you may find some reward from it. I did. I think Michael did. James did. But it ain't easy.
Yeah.
It ain't easy.
It can be really tough.
The other question that I kind of put in the thing, because when you was talking about the whole God thing, and everybody was talking about if God exists, one of the things that like it was always said at church that I'm not believing anymore was the whole thing about, with my car accident, I survived because he had a purpose for me. What purpose would that have been if that was the case? Because I have no clue why am I going through what I'm going through if that was the case, when he could have just healed me if that was the case.
Could have just prevented the car accident.
That too, yeah.
Yeah, and when you talk about purpose, though, to think of purpose outside of your life, if someone tells you your ultimate purpose is not your life, then they're manipulating you. They're trying to enslave you. They're trying to get you to do something for something other than what's in your interest. Run for your life from anyone who says that you should be serving some other purpose than your well-being and happiness. And those little tricks they have, God saved your life so that you could serve some other end. They've got an end in mind, and they're perfectly willing to let you sacrifice yourself for that end. Give political example. That's the way dictators always work. You're giving yourself for the great communist future. You're dying for the Aryan race. You're giving yourself to your neighbors and their happiness. Don't let anyone pick your spiritual pocket like that. Your life and happiness is your purpose. Keep that in mind, and don't feel the slightest guilt about that. Boy, you see, that's what religion will do. It'll say you're here serving God's purpose, and if you don't totally surrender yourself to God's purpose, there's something wrong. No. Your own life and happiness should be your own purpose, and don't feel ashamed or guilty. Overcoming that kind of shame in me was a big obstacle for my own happiness. No, why the hell am I serving someone else's purpose or some group's purpose or some dictator's purpose or God's purpose? Purpose is about me. My life is my purpose. Thank you very much. My happiness and success is what it's about.
That's right. You're checking your premises right now, Katie. Good shirt. Love it. Any
Yep.
any other questions, guys? No questions? No questions from the gallery? All right, guys. It was great. James, thanks for joining us today. We know you could have done a million things, but you chose. Oh, Katie. Catherine. Sorry.
Hi.
How many Ks?
I have no question, but a book suggestion also.
Okay.
Effective Egoism from Don Watkins.
Really good book. He's
Yeah.
an
It is
effective
a good book.
communicator. So I
He's a
highly
great
recommend
communicator.
effective egoism. He's contrasting with the idea of effective egoism or effective altruism. Now,
Altruism. Yeah.
what the hell is effective altruism? Sacrificing yourself thoroughly down to the last drop? No, 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 no. What we want to be is effective in succeeding in our life, our happiness. I couldn't, if I wanted to, make you happy. I don't know what your values are. Someone says, make other people happy. I can't do it. I couldn't do it if I wanted to. Even if I spent 24/7, 365 on making other people happy, I can't do it for you. Only you know you. Only you can decide for you what your career is, who your friends should be, who the love of your life should be. Only you can do that for yourself.
That's true.
Amen. Great book recommendation.
Katie, if you're still there, I'm sharing right now with you my interview with Don Watkins on his book, Effective Egoism. I just sent it to you in Messenger on X.
All right, guys. I think that's it. Thank you so much. Thanks, James. It was great seeing you here. We will see you next week with another topic about the intersection of psychology and philosophy. Until then, remember to always check your premises. Peace.